You are now listening to the Purple Fox Podcast. Hey, what's going on, Nuance Populi? This is your host, Kevin C. Eze, reminding you real quick to like and subscribe. Before we get into it, you can find previous content on either Spotify or YouTube. All right, let's get to it. What's going on, everybody? My name is Kevin C. Eze, your host of the Purple Fox Podcast, and today I'm tackling the issue of parking and parallels within the City of Downey. So during my brief tenure as a City of Downey Public Works Committee member, the issue that I flagged as an observable future boiling point is the situation around parking, evidenced by the number of permit requests and complaints being tossed at the Public Works Department. Pure and simple, the City of Downey just doesn't have enough of it to satisfy the needs of its growing population. Occasionally, multiple problems within the city intersect, much like the months-long issue on Manzanar Avenue, due to the chaotic customer base of the Tacos Dangoyo restaurant. Angry residents, some frustrated to tears, continuously beg city leadership for some kind of fix to these issues with little success. The reality is that there most likely isn't enough in the city budget to alleviate the parking situation with an equitable citywide capital improvement project. However, hope could arise in the form of Councilman Tim Horn of District 1, my former Public Works Committee colleague, who has made it known that Downey's problems with parking are top of mind. Councilman Horn isn't dropping the conversation around parking and seems intent on seeing some reform, inviting other members of the council to take the matter more seriously. So the question remains, how can the City of Downey transform parking in a way that increases public safety, satisfies residents, and organizes business interests for the better? Now, I'd be acting in bad faith if I didn't mention that Downey currently has a PACS capital improvements schedule. Capital improvements being the arm of local government responsible for the design, bidding, and implementation of formal public works construction contracts. But projects around the urgent parking situation don't seem to be anywhere on it. The category that a parking project of this nature would most likely be classified under would be a community enhancement within the streets functional area. While it makes sense for the city to prioritize community preservation, the community preservation category, seeing as how improvements often degrade with time, makes sense. The residents are currently begging for much needed enhancements. Homeowners want to park near the homes that they've worked so hard to enjoy, and renters need a break from being treated like second-rate citizens, often having to park several blocks from the apartments that they can barely afford. Unfortunately, I know that even if a new parking structure or lot project were to be placed on the CIP schedule, the city would take a huge hit to the reserves. And it wouldn't begin until at least a year after submission. Maybe an outside commercial entity could step in and offer lot services at a reasonable and continuous rate to alleviate the problem. Whatever there is to be done, the City Council is being called on to act and engage. They have been elected to serve the public's needs, but it seems only Councilman Horn has the desire to place focus here. Nowhere is the problem more apparent than Manzanar and Manzanar Avenue by the Tacos Dangoyo restaurant in District 4. In a Downey Patriot article written in 2022 called "Barricades Are First Step in Fixing Neighborhoods' Complaints with Traffic Taco Shop," Alex Dominguez writes that residents in the area are fed up with drivers using Manzanar to avoid the intersection at Lakewood Boulevard and Telegraph Road, causing speed safety concerns, and having to suffer from unsavory activity stemming from patrons of the taco shop. Dominguez quotes Christopher Rowland, a vocal Downey resident in the area who says, quote, "Some of the issues we've been having are people throwing trash on our lawns, people throwing trash in the neighborhood, people parking in front of driveways, and people parking in front of cars. Before we had all the streets and sidewalks done, customers were peeing and pooping in our yards." End quote. During one city council session, then Councilman LaPlante and interim city manager Rick Scott both gave residents in the area similar comments about how the barricades won't solve the problem, but would alleviate some of the disturbances. These comments have unfortunately been confirmed as accurate, evidenced by the still continuing disturbances and repeat appearances of Manzanar Avenue residents at city council session. According to the interim city manager, Rick Scott, the next step is most likely going to be closing sidewalk access so that people won't be able to park down below and then walk up into the northern area to get to the commercial areas. It would go a long way if these residents were given a continuous update during every city council session until the problem is resolved. But it seems the city council has yet to get the hint that this issue is currently the biggest stressor in their residential lives. Time will tell if the new city manager can come up with a solution that will satisfy the needs of these mentally exhausted residents. Mainly what I'm seeing is the call for city government to move faster than it currently does, which can't always happen the way people think it can. There are realities around funding caps, real estate, employment, and employment that can hamstring a municipality in terms of what projects are possible. City staff hear and take note of all the complaints, but have their hands tied when it comes to immediate actions. Residents, like those that frequent city council sessions, want not just to be heard, but to see and receive updates on progress. The hard pill to swallow is that these residents may not see any real work happen for a while. However, I'm certain the city council would be amazed to know just how much, even without a finished result, constant updates can calm people around residential pain points. I mean, call them, email them constantly. Just let them know what's going on. Have a template if you need it. The ball is in their court to take that initiative for themselves. The council has to create an environment where residents don't have to come to session and be reminded or remind the council to give them updates on serious issues. The reality is that a comprehensive parking project that could begin to alleviate the situation Downey is currently dealing with doesn't fit within the scope of the current budget. More of an investment would have to be allocated to the community development portion of the budget, which currently houses $9.1 million or 6% of the overall budget, according to the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 Budget Master Report. I find it interesting that city leadership feels that the development of Downey only deserves 6% of the budget. But I can also understand that balancing a budget is not an easy task. The thing is, if you were to ask the residents, I'm sure they wouldn't be opposed to hiking up that percentage to at least 8 to 9%, considering the city's current needs, according to the report, that 8 to 9% isn't unreasonable, seeing as how the 3-year trend of the allocation has been trending downward from 12.6 million to 10.9 million, and finally to the 9.1 million we currently see allotted. Why would city leadership feel that community development would need to be scaled down after one of the biggest global health and infrastructural events we've witnessed in 100 years? A public hearing on parking could be just the thing needed for leadership to understand how serious the issue is. Perhaps Councilman Horn will be the one that opens up that discussion. We'll see. And many cities are turning to futuristic methods to solve the impending parking catastrophe. Now, it's important to note that it's not just Downey dealing with this parking issue. I mean, you can go to West Hollywood or San Diego, any metropolitan area, and really feel the effect of this issue. Now, automated parking systems, or APSs, Fully automated or semi-automated structures designed to stack cars vertically and limit space are slowly being rolled out by newly built apartment complexes or condominiums throughout the United States. If the city of Downey utilized the functionality of APSs, several pain points would be alleviated for the residents. Downey residents would be amazed to see the city implement an option that saves space, limits parking garage construction cost and time, provides better security for cars and property, and provides a more manageable parking arrangement for ADA residents. All things which automated parking systems make possible. The biggest issue the city would run into is budgeting for an APS project, seeing as how estimates are set around $65,000 to $100,000 per space for fully automated systems and $20,000 to $40,000 per space for semi-automated systems. However, if the community development were to receive its previous allotment before the 3-year trend decreased, I'm sure Downey would be able to slow roll APS projects around the places that need it most. City leadership may realize that projects like these could go a long way towards handling problems like those at the Tacos Don Goyo or several of the other parking hotspots within the city that require permits to regulate. Automated parking systems could make Downey the talk of Southern California, generating much interest and eventual commercial revenue. Something to think about. What I find interesting is that some of the ridicule that Councilman Horn has received for focusing on this issue in particular is it's astounding. On the Talking Downey podcast, Mario Guerra, former mayor of Downey, and Eric Pierce, editor of the Downey Patriot, made their opinions on Councilman Horn's policy agenda known, brushing it off as unserious, focusing instead on how he would impact the city manager vote at the time. It echoes the same kind of petty, reactionary, short-term thinking that justified the push to oust former Mayor Pro Tem Catherine Alvarez. It's interesting that happened as well because there's been recent chatter on some of the community forums around the astronomically high rent increases. Kind of interesting, huh? As a former Public Works Committee member, I know for certain that Councilman Horn was in a unique position to tap into the residential needs of the city. And parking was an issue that arose more than a few times, something the Downey experts on said podcast should be aware of. The fact that these men don't know a long-standing member of the Downey community says more about the bubble they live in than the effectiveness of his work or the fire behind his drive. I mean, get to know the guy. As an active listener of the podcast, I would actually appreciate them doing a good faith assessment on the issue of parking. But I'm not sure it would be worth holding out hope for them to tackle that particular issue on the show. Perhaps they could invite Councilman Horn on their podcast and ask him why he's so passionate about the issue. From what I've seen of the Downey community, it seems its best foot is put forward when people seek genuine understanding. The way I see it, the parking situation within the city of Downey filters into every area and metric that could be used to improve the functionality of the city. There are very clear connections between better parking options and public safety, one of the main tenets on the mayor's policy agenda. As the residents gradually continue to trickle into public works meetings to dispute their parking issues, they place their hopes in the availability of competent city leadership. Even without fully vocalizing the desire, most residents want to live in a city that continues to increase the functionality of the community. While it's unrealistic to think local government can solve all types of issues perfectly, it's not reasonable. The most important thing for residents to see is often just the attempt. The attempt is often what impresses me. And that way they can look up and truly say, wow, I know they can't do everything right now or have the resources to tackle everything, but my city really goes for it, That's important. What remains to be seen is if city leadership will take it seriously or will just, watch the issue, shove the issue down the pipeline until it becomes an undeniable eyesore and pain. The future of Downey parking awaits. So this has been your host once again, Kevin C. Eze, with another Purple Fox update, signing out.